Okay, so let's get started here. I'm going to call this adjourned meeting to order of the City Council. And I know as far as roll call, we have 4 members present, and I believe Mayor Pro Tem Rue is on Zoom someplace.
Yes, I am,
All
sir.
right, we can hear you, nice and loud.
Okay.
All right, so I know we have public comment on the agenda, and somebody submitted a public comment card, and I don't think that this person wants to sit through the entire budget for public comments. So I'm going to move up public comments at this time. There's an opportunity for anybody in the public to address the City Council, either on the budget issue or on any other item. You have 5 minutes. If you're on Zoom or on the phone, Zoom, you hit the raise hand feature to request to speak, and then if you're on the phone, be *9. So Andrea, who do you have?
Hey, Luciano Quezuda from Congresswoman Norma Torres'
That was
office.
fast. Hey, how you doing? Let's get you, hold on, there you are, go ahead.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is Luciano. Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce myself. I am a field representative for Congresswoman Norma Torres. I just wanted to give a chance to introduce myself and let everyone know that I'm here. If there's anything that I could do for you guys or even our office, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll stick around for a little bit just in case. So thank you.
Thank you. I didn't want to put you through the entire budget presentation and have you sit through, especially since we have no AC in the building because of our little storm this morning. Knocked out the power in this room, so I apologize. Hopefully it doesn't cause an issue for anybody. If you think you need a break, we can stop if you need to walk out or get some fresh water or go in the AC portion of the building. I will say that the budget for this year is probably one of the better budgets I've seen, but I'll let staff make the presentation. So what we're going to do is we have a long presentation. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop on page 29 for Q&A for the first part that includes revenue appropriations. And then we will stop on page 34 as we get through the personnel recommendations. And then after that, we will stop on page 63 as we get through the Building a Better Montclair. And then we'll stop on page 78 for the remainder of the city budget. And then after that, we'll have the Housing Corporation budget. And then that's how we will end the meeting with the presentation of that. So I'm going to hand this over to staff.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we have a long presentation tonight, so I will not ad lib at the beginning of the process and hand it over to Finance Director, or upcoming Finance Director, Janet Colbeck, and allow her to make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Good evening, Mayor, Council members, City staff, members of the audience. Tonight, we're here to present our fiscal year 2022-23 General Operating Fund Budget Review. So our overview and budget process. This evening's budget workshop provides an overview of the proposed fiscal year 2022-23 annual budget for the City of Montclair with focused discussion on the following topics: budget process, producing a balanced budget, revenue and appropriations, unassigned and special purpose reserve funds, personnel services, and building a better Montclair. The annual budget development process includes the following significant steps. Finance Department staff develop and refine revenue projections. We also, in conjunction with departments, forecast personnel requirements. Department heads and their staff are provided with prior year amounts and formats for budgeting annual budget requests. Departments prepare their budget requests for appropriations. City manager and finance department meet with department heads and staff to evaluate, modify, and finalize department level requests. And the proposed annual budget document is submitted for City Council review and consideration. So producing a balanced budget. The annual and primary goal related to budget preparation: produce an operating budget where revenues equal or exceed appropriations. The fiscal year 2022-23 budget, as presented, has a net excess of general fund revenues over general fund operating appropriations in the amount of $2,887,720. This excess in general fund revenues is directly related to projected increases in the city's sales tax and transaction and use tax revenues. This surplus in general fund revenue over general fund appropriations has enabled the general fund unassigned reserve to be brought to $7.26 million which is approximately 22.29% of the general fund operating appropriations and nears compliance with City Council's unassigned reserve ratio goal of 25%. Now we'll discuss revenues. So as you can see, our revenues, all funds over the current year over the prior year is just over 8.5 million. You will see a reduction in general fund revenues of 2.9 million. This is due to, my mind just went blank, I'm sorry. Oh, this is due to the fact that we are allocating a portion of general fund revenue directly to the debt service fund for the pension obligation bond. Significant revenue components for the general fund. We're going to receive $33,549,724 in combined property sales, use, and transactions and use taxes. This is due to rebounding after the pandemic and the passage of Measure L by Montclair voters. Of the above total, the following amounts are allocated as indicated. Debt service on bonds, $2.5 million for the 2014 lease revenue bond, $2.3 for the 2021 lease revenue bond, and $4.4 million for the 2021 pension obligation bond. Also, $3 million to the unfunded accrued liability pension obligation amortization fund, $2.3 million to the public parking facility development fund, $500,000 to a proposed inflation control expenditure fund, $1,132,320 to special purpose reserve funds for special governmental purposes, and $1.5 million to the economic development assets fund. Other fiscal general fund revenue adjustments, $16,600 increase in fines and forfeitures, and $56,500 increase in miscellaneous revenues. For significant revenue adjustments, all other fund accounts, $100,883 increase in the gas tax fund, $100,000 increase in the Measure I fund, $335,000 increase in the park development fund, $1,544,353 increase in the American Rescue Plan Fund, and this recognizes actual federal allocations available through San Bernardino County, which we didn't know last year exactly how much we were going to be receiving. The second tranche will be received in the third quarter of 2022. $176,788 increase in the Public Safety Fund, and a $205,000 increase in the Economic Development Fund. Now we'll discuss appropriations. So our appropriations for all funds, we had a city department request versus city manager recommended. City manager cut $1,826,355 in appropriations. And for the general fund, we had a reduction of $361,713. City manager recommended amounts, current year versus prior year, $2.8 million in all funds, and $527,580 in the general fund. For personnel services, all funds, $26,093,177, which is 60.3% of total appropriations. This is down from $28,901,483 for the current fiscal year. And this reduction in personnel costs, even though we added positions, it's due to the elimination of the UAL payment made to CalPERS each year. The general fund, $22,630,421, which is 69.4% of general fund appropriations. And this is down from $23,633,705, which is due to that UAL payment we didn't have to make this year. Services and supplies, all funds, $15,644,212, which is 36.1% of total appropriations. This is up from $15,229,220 for the current year. General fund, $9,459,427, which is 29% of general fund appropriations. This is up from $8,301,188 for the current year. Capital outlay, we have a total of just over $1.5 million budgeted. Of this amount, $185,200 is being funded by the Equipment Replacement Fund. In the City Manager Department, $286,500 for computer equipment. Human Services Department, $4,900 for a leg curl machine. Police Department, $49,550 for one administration vehicle. $100,447 for two investigations vehicles. $264,500 for 4 patrol vehicles. For the fire department, $30,000 for hose replacement, $28,500 for tablet command first due hardware, $2,500 for an ice machine, $44,140 for 2 Lucas 3 chest compression systems, $44,300 for 1 LifePak 15 version 4 cardiac monitor and defibrillator, and $4,500 for 2 King Vision A-Blade model video laryngoscopes. Public Works, $2,000 for office furniture for Director of Public Works, $12,000 for Graco Line Laser V3900 line striper, $5,000 for a concrete vacuum, $16,000 for a walk-behind roller for the asphalt truck, $1,600 for landscape trailer for the street crew, $18,000 for a stake bed and liftgate that will be added to an existing vehicle, $568,222 for a combo sewer truck, $5,035 for a floor scrubber. Community Development Department, $4,000 for conference room furniture, $11,000 for cubicle office furniture, and for the Economic Development Department, $40,000 for 1 administration vehicle. So on this chart, you see the overall cost for personnel services, services and supplies, and capital outlay. You'll see a change in the prior year of a negative $4.3 million. That's due to the UAL payment that we didn't have to make this year. But you'll see the debt service increased by $4.2 million, and that is due to the debt service on the pension obligation bond. So we have a net difference of $131,166 less than the prior year. So we're also doing some transfers in and out. So transferring to the general operating fund from the traffic safety fund is our normal $100,000 a year transfer for program costs. To the economic development assets fund from the general operating fund, we're transferring $1.5 million. And to special reserve funds from the general operating fund, we're transferring $1,632,320. So, and this goes into detail, a little bit more detail on the special revenue funds and what is being transferred to each one. The most significant is $1 million to the UAL POB amortization fund and $500,000 to the proposed inflation control expenditure fund. We're also doing a couple transfers within the special purpose funds, $243,938 from the technology enhancement fund to the self-insurance fund, and also $500,000 from the CalPERS unanticipated cost fund to the self-insurance fund. General fund operating fund balance unassigned reserve. So you can see here our operating fund balance, what we're estimating at the end of the next fiscal year is just over $7.2 million, which is 22.29% of the operating appropriations. So the Government Finance Officers Association General Fund Unassigned Reserve Ratio recommendation is minimum of 25%, optimum is 50%. And City Council has directed us to achieve 25%. Estimated June 30th, 2023 General Operating Funds fund balance estimate of approximately $7.26 million nears the threshold target of 25% of operating appropriations. Based on total reserve assets, including $16,786,263 in special purpose reserve funds, the total operating reserve ratio, unassigned and assigned, is approximately 74%. Fiscal year 2022-23 reserve balance ratio shows a slight decline. This decline is due to the following: a difference in operating appropriations between consecutive years, the creation of 3 new debt service funds that require adequate funding for annual payments. That's for the 2021 issue of lease revenue bonds, the 2021 issue of pension bonds, and the UAL POB amortization fund. Adjustments to balances and special purpose reserve funds to address a variety of issues. Funding assigned to the Economic Development Agency for real property acquisition. City staff will continue to strive to obtain a fund balance ratio in the general operating fund's unassigned reserves that represents no less than 25% of the general operating fund's appropriations budget. Maintaining general fund's fund balance and reserves. In recent years, the city's success at achieving and maintaining a healthy general fund operating fund unassigned reserve fund balance has been accomplished through commitment to the following coordinated objectives: fiscal restraint achieved by implementation of sound economic policies and practices, reviewing the shared allocation of personnel-related costs between the general operating fund, other city entities, and other city funds, controlling or restricting growth in personnel-related costs, requiring employees to pay a portion of the CalPERS member contribution, and implementation of revenue enhancement measures. Recent and ongoing efforts designed to enhance city revenues include the following: ongoing evaluation of service contracting for specified programs, consideration of a Proposition 64 compliance program, promoting development within North Montclair pursuant to the amended North Montclair Downtown Specific Plan, pursue development within the Montclair Place District Specific Plan area, promote housing, commercial, and industrial development projects throughout the Montclair community, and adopt the general plan update and the Arrow Highway Mixed-Use District Specific Plan.
Okay, we'll stop there for a second. I'm gonna take this chance. Any members have any conflict of interest they want to note related to the budget? Tenny, I think you have two, if I'm correct, the Chamber of Commerce and also the after-school program. You probably want to note for,
Respond to both of those. For the Chamber of Commerce, there really is no conflict
Okay.
because there's no financial issue.
Okay.
And for the after-school program, my husband submitted his resignation last Monday.
last Monday, so he's no longer an employee of the city of Montclair. Okay,
Tomorrow's his last day.
all right, tomorrow will be the last day, so that's for clarification. All right, so any questions for staff? Who wants to start with? Anybody have any questions for staff this time? If we don't, we can continue on.
One quick question. I was taking notes, and you mentioned a certain tranche of money would be coming in the third quarter of this fiscal year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, which tranche was that? Was that our COVID relief money you're referring to?
That is the American Rescue Plan.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay, no questions? No?
Mr. Mayor, if I'm correct, she's talking about ARPA, correct? American Rescue Plan?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
yes.
Yeah, quick
Go ahead.
question, and I'm sorry if
Go
you
ahead,
answered
Carissa.
this. The reduction in the operating fund balance, does that have to do with COVID money, grants and that sort of thing that we were not given, that we're not anticipating for next year?
Or you're talking about for the unassigned reserve balance?
For the, not for the reserve, for the operating fund balance.
The revenues?
Yes, the estimated revenue for fiscal year 2022.
Yeah, the reduction in that is basically because we're allocating the 4.4 million directly to the debt service fund for the pension obligation bond. So that's why you see a reduction in our general fund revenue.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it's a 2.9 million reduction, but 4.4 was taken for that debt service fund. So we actually, are seeing a little bit of an increase. And it just, that's what the reduction is for.
Mr. Mayor, let me piggyback on that point then. Let me find my page. I believe I added it up. The payments for the three different bonds, correct?
Yes,
Is a total of 9.2 million, correct?
correct,
That's what I thought. All right.
yeah. Those funding for all the debt service funds comes directly from the general fund. We allocate that directly first before it goes to
Right.
then anything left goes to the general fund. We want to make sure we have money for those payments.
It's off, yeah.
And I just want to know that the Measure L of fund, revenue fund, expected to be about $10.1 million.
Correct.
If we didn't have that $10.1 million, this would be a much more challenged budget to put together, am I correct? And we won't be appropriating this much money as a result of that. So I just want to point out to my colleagues, and so now let's go with personnel services next.
Okay, so for personnel services, right now we have 199 full-time positions. 198.51 are assigned to the general fund, sewer fund, gas tax, and grants. Currently, we have nothing allocated to the Montclair Housing Corporation. Those that were previously funded there are now fully funded by the general fund, an action that reserves Housing Corporation funding for maintenance and expansion of the city's affordable housing program. And .49 is funded by the Montclair Successor Redevelopment Agency, and we have 3 part-time benefited positions.
What I want to say here is that what you're seeing is that the general fund is starting to take responsibility for personnel and other services and supplies and capital outlays that it was historically responsible for. And during the last decade, a lot of that responsibility had been transferred to other funds. So, for example, the gas tax fund was picking up a lot of responsibilities in relation to operations of public works programs that restricted our ability to do infrastructure improvement that would otherwise have been achieved through the gas tax fund. So this budget is now reflecting that a lot of these burdens are coming back onto the general fund so that these dollars can go back to their historic programs so that we can continue those types of services that those funds were intended for.
And we also did that as well with Economic Development Agency funds. We put that back to the general fund to allow for more economic development. The city's fiscal year 2022-23 proposed operating budget incorporates the following personnel-related reclassifications. Director of Human Services to Assistant City Manager / Human Service Director. The wage and benefit-related cost adjustment at Step E is approximately $22,120 annually at the current rate of pay and benefits. Finance Manager to Director of Finance. The wage and benefit-related cost adjustment at Step E is approximately $66,150 annually at the current rate of pay and benefits. Senior Management Analyst to Assistant Director of Human Services / Grant Manager. The wage and benefit-related cost adjustment at Step E is approximately $50,264 annually at the current rate of pay and benefits. Assistant Engineer to Associate Engineer. The wage and benefit-related cost adjustment at Step E is approximately $9,840 annually at the current rate of pay and benefits. And employees subject to reclassification promotion are generally placed at Step A of the new position or placed into a step that provides a minimum of 2.5% wage adjustment. We're also incorporating some new positions in this next fiscal year's budget. Assistant to the City Manager / Economic Development Agency. The wage and benefit-related cost at Step E is approximately $146,970 annually. Deputy City Clerk, the wage and benefit-related cost at Step E is approximately $79,545 annually. Crime Analyst, the wage and benefit-related cost at Step E is approximately $95,460 annually. And this position was approved by the Personnel Committee for this current fiscal year budget, but remains vacant. Police Dispatch Supervisor, the wage and benefit-related cost at Step E is approximately $105,675 annually. And this position was approved by the Personnel Committee for this current budget. However, the Chief of Police anticipates converting the position to a police dispatcher. The Fire Department. During fiscal year 2022-23, the City Manager will evaluate restructuring the Fire Department to include the following: restoring the Fire Chief classification, adding up to 6 firefighter paramedic positions, redeployment of emergency medical rescue squad services. The projected annual wage and benefit costs to restore the fire chief and firefighter paramedic positions will add approximately $1.1 million annually at the current rate of pay and benefits at Step E. The $1.1 million cost estimate does not include capital costs related to returning a rescue squad to full service. Vehicle-related costs will be based on equipment needs, supplies, and the deployment capabilities of existing rolling stock.
Okay, we'll stop there for a second. Any questions on the personnel? Anybody have questions? No?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
My page here in the city manager's dissertation. That was a joke. He didn't get it.
I got it. I saw your smile on Monday when the mayor mentioned that it was only about 20 pages long.
Yeah, thereabouts. Who's counting, right? Regarding the, it's regarding the police department. Police dispatch supervisor. I have it marked in this page, but I can't find my thumb point. Let me just paraphrase what I think I read and saw. In the report, it stated that it would add to an existing police dispatch supervisor, correct?
Well, there had already been one in existence, so this was adding a second one.
Okay. Now, based on the comment now, the chief intends to convert the existing position or the funding through this particular position to add another dispatcher, correct?
That is correct.
How many dispatchers do we have at the moment? I ask because last budget, we did allocate funding to hire and increase that particular department.
Right, so there are 8 currently. That doesn't mean that there are 8 that are filled. There are some vacancies, and this could potentially add an additional dispatcher to that 8.
At the existing rate of pay for the others, I'm assuming?
Yes. And the reason this opportunity makes itself available is that one of the 2 supervisors has turned in resignation and will be leaving the organization. So the chief, in my conversation with him, feels that the one supervisor he has is extremely capable and competent, and he believes that that individual can take over supervision of all of the shifts.
Of the 8 positions that we have, how many are currently filled?
New hires were just approved this week, so he's probably up to around 6, 7.
I don't have that paper with me right this second, but I think by the time everybody's hired right now, I'm going to be down 3. So, and we have another recruitment in the works right now. So we'll be, hopefully we'll be up to par here pretty quick. It's just a progression because the new dispatchers have to go through a training phase. And I can't hire a ton of people and have them all train at the same time.
Part of the reason why I'm asking is because shortly after we approve those positions in the current budget, even though it's going to end in a matter of days, a couple months after, the city of Upland then offered dispatch pay that was a little bit more enticing than what we had offered. I know there was some chatter amongst folks that perhaps we may be losing folks to other nearby agencies that might be paying more. I was concerned about that because I hear we just try to make a good faith effort to try to shore up our ranks in that department. And I was just,
So as it relates to dispatchers, I have not heard anything about anybody leaving to go somewhere else and work for another agency. If Upland increased their salary, I wasn't completely aware of that. What did happen is the former chief now at the time did reach out to me about merging dispatch services with them. And he was also having consultation with the sheriff's department about outsourcing and something of that nature. But that police chief since moved on to another organization. And so where they're at right now or what their plans are, I'm not exactly certain. But we're heading in the right direction that we should have been heading, and we seem to be moving forward.
so down 3, meaning that you have 5 then presently on the books.
I have to look at the numbers, but I think that with the dispatch supervisor that's leaving, that would give us a total of 9 positions as straight dispatchers with 1 as a supervisor, and then that department would be a total of 10 personnel altogether.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Appreciate it.
Member Lopez, not knowing when exactly you came across that information, we did make adjustment to the police dispatcher salary range as well as increasing the police supervisor salary range in order to attract individuals.
And I appreciate that. I think we would have needed
Yes.
to do that, otherwise we would have lost good folk, but thank you.
Okay.
That's it for now, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else on personnel? Okay, the next one is the Building a Better Montclair. This is gonna be a long one, so does anybody need a little break, get some fresh air before we hit this one, or we're all ready to go? Ready to rock and roll? Okay, let's rock and roll.
Building a Better Montclair. Building a Better Montclair requires a team of dedicated leaders committed to excellence in the pursuit of ideas and ideals. To achieve this blend of municipal achievement, the city manager regularly challenges the organization with new objectives designed to promote improvements to the overall quality of life in Montclair, facilitate infrastructure improvements throughout the city, address long-term costs related to CalPERS pension increases, promote and enhance community services and public safety programs, produce revenue essential for enhancing employee working conditions, address state and federal legislative priorities that affect organizational operations, strengthen and harden Montclair against adverse fiscal conditions, promote special objectives, including extension of Gold Line light rail service to the Montclair Trans Center, and address City Council directed priorities and objectives. Recent ongoing and planned efforts designed to achieve objectives on the previous slide include the following: formation of a new transactions and use tax district. Measure L was approved by voters on November 3rd, 2020, with approximately 69% approval. Due to a rebounding post-pandemic economy, Measure L is projected to generate approximately $10.1 million the next fiscal year. Evaluate service contracting for specified programs. Service programs offered by the city are occasionally evaluated to determine if service contracting provides the city with viable and affordable options for delivering public services. For example, the following are provided through contract services: fire code inspections, solid waste collection services, and a variety of services in the Public Works Department. City staff will continue to evaluate outsourcing of services to promote cost efficiencies and enhance services to the communities. Consider implementation of a Proposition 64 commercial cannabis compliance program. City staff projects that a regulatory system for cannabis will produce between 2 to 4 million in annual revenue based on the number and type of licenses issued and the designated locations for regulated commercial cannabis activities. Commercial cannabis sales are already present in Montclair through delivery services permitted statewide under Proposition 64. Montclair receives no tax benefit from the local sale of cannabis provided through delivery from area cities. The city also commits services to combat illegal cannabis operations. Adjacent cities that have approved or are expected to approve commercial cannabis sales are Pomona, has already approved, and Claremont, they are expected to approve. Recent polling of residents conducted by FM3 demonstrates that approximately 70% of likely Montclair voters support legalization of cannabis, and of that 70% in support, approximately 90% support a city-sponsored tax on commercial cannabis sales and activities. A tax measure submitted for voter consideration is likely to propose a 3% minimum to 10% maximum tax rate on gross sales of commercial cannabis. Support for the legalization of cannabis continues to grow. In 2016, when Proposition 64 was approved statewide by voters, the measure received approximately 53.4% voter approval in Montclair. Today, the likely level of support in Montclair appears to have increased by approximately 16%. Promote development within North Montclair pursuant to the amended North Montclair Downtown Specific Plan. Promoting development in North Montclair is expected to achieve the following: improve the overall quality of life in the community, create new housing, office, and mixed-use projects, move forward the city's vision for a transit-oriented district, and improve Montclair's property and sales tax base. To date, North Montclair development projects include the 385-unit, the Paseos at Montclair North, the 129-unit, the District at Arrow Station, the 212-unit, the Elixon Kendry, the 23-unit Vista Court, and the 360 mixed-unit Village at Montclair, which is now under construction. Other North Montclair projects under review and nearing entitlement include Montclair Kendry expansion, consisting of 137 units, Montclair Station, consisting of 302 units, Panera Bread, Arrow Highway and Fremont Avenue street improvements, and North Montclair, Montclair Place District street design and engineering. Montclair Trans Center related projects, property acquisition. The city manager continues to advocate for transfer of the Caltrans owned parcels at the Montclair Trans Center to the city for development through a public-private partnership. A city-sponsored appraisal values the Caltrans owned property at approximately $34 million. Montclair would be required to maintain parking for 1,600 vehicles. A city-sponsored appraisal for the cost of construction of a 1,600 space parking garage is approximately $37 million, creating a $3 to $4 million negative value for the Caltrans owned property. In April 2022, the city manager submitted to the office of State Senator Susan Rubio a detailed analysis justifying the city's request for transfer of the Caltrans owned property at the Trans Center to the city. City staff will continue to meet with representatives from Caltrans District 8 Surplus Real Property Division to promote transfer of the Caltrans owned property to the city.
And I want to add that this morning I met with the city's federal legislative advocate, Jamie Jones, in which we discussed trying to secure funds from the federal government's bus account for the acquisition of the Caltrans property if that becomes a necessary requirement.
Continuing with Montclair Trans Center related projects, the Gold Line extension. Mayor John Dutray, Mayor Pro Tem Bill Rue, and the city manager continue to actively advocate for extension of the Gold Line from Pomona to Montclair. The Gold Line Foothill Extension Construction Authority estimates the cost of construction from Pomona to Claremont and Montclair at $748 million. The state legislature is currently developing a budget plan for fiscal year 22-23 that is expected to incorporate $748 million in funding for the Pomona to Montclair segment of the Gold Line. If funding is approved, the construction authority will rebid the Pomona to Montclair segment with completion projected for 2027-2028. In fiscal year 23-24, the city manager will propose funding a Gold Line Montclair Trans Center Betterment Program to improve Trans Center operation services and architectural features. Redevelopment of Montclair Place. The planned redevelopment of Montclair Place is intended to address the changing nature of the retail industry. City staff presented the Montclair Place District-specific plan to City Council for adoption in November 2021. The MPDSP focuses on developing a central downtown warren of blocks, streets, parks, and open spaces populated with residential, mixed-use, office entertainment, restaurant, civic, commercial, and education uses. Promoting development of the Montclair Place District pursuant to the vision of the MPDSP would improve the overall quality of life in the community and enhance the city's sales and property tax base. MPDSP projects recently completed within or proposed for the Montclair Place District include AMC Luxury Dine-In Theater, Phase 1 Mixed-Use Project, CIM Group, featuring 500-plus units and 6 to 8-story building configurations reflecting 6 architectural styles with podium parking, and Phase 1 Mixed-Use Project, Village Partners, featuring 340-plus units and 4 to 5 building configurations reflecting 5 architectural styles with podium parking. Montclair and CIM Group partner on environmental, social, and governance investment practices and strategies for Montclair Place development. Interest on the part of investors and other corporate stakeholders in environmental, social, and governance matters has surged in recent years, and the current economic, public health, and social justice crises have only intensified this focus. Investors are increasingly embracing companies and communities that take action to address the climate crisis and other environmental and social issues, including resource conservation, biodiversity, renewable energy, zero-emission transit alternatives, effective waste management, and human rights. CIM Group's corporate policy represents a commitment to improving the environment, establishing dynamic districts and public gathering places, supporting community needs and the workforce, contributing to the local economy, and incorporating high ESG standards. Montclair supports CIM Group's ESG leadership and its partnership with the city to incorporate ESG standards in development here in the city. The Economic Development Agency and its expanding role in promoting economic development, planning for development in the city's sphere of influence, and promotion of affordable housing. The fiscal year 22-23 proposed operating budget provides for retitling the Economic Development Department as the Economic Development Agency, emphasizing the department's evolving role as an extension of the former Montclair Redevelopment Agency. Assets of the Economic Development Department will be retained by the EDA and its admission programs, the Montclair Housing Corporation, and the Montclair Housing Authority. Included in the fiscal year 22-23 proposed operating budget is a recommended allocation of $1.5 million to the Economic Development Assets Fund, formerly the Economic Development Fund. The purpose of the EDAF is to provide and enhance EDA funding for real property acquisition. Real property purchased through the EDAF will be held by the EDA for future development, either through a public-private partnership or by sale to a private entity for development purposes. To achieve its objectives, the EDA will, in part, consider tax code provisions related to the operation of opportunity zones. Opportunity zones have been established and what the Federal Department of the Treasury has defined as economically distressed communities, including Montclair. Within opportunity zones, new investments may, under certain conditions, be eligible for preferential federal tax treatment or referential consideration for federal grants and programs. The city manager and EDA will work with county and state officials to secure federal opportunity zone designation for Montclair's sphere of influence as part of an annexation strategy. Affordable housing development. In April 2022, the Montclair Housing Authority became the beneficiary of approximately $3.2 million in repaid residual receipt loans that had been provided to Augusta communities. The Montclair Housing Corporation holds property in North Montclair acquired in early 2022 that may serve as a location for a future affordable housing development. The city is also committed to acquiring Caltrans' owned property at the Montclair Trans Center and is pursuing a public-private partnership for development of affordable housing. San Gabriel Valley Housing Trust Fund. In 2019, Senator Susan Rubio authored SB 751, establishing the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust Fund, a joint powers authority allowing communities within San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments jurisdiction to receive funding for various housing and homelessness-related programs. To date, Senator Rubio has secured more than $30 million in state funding to address housing and homelessness issues within the San Gabriel Valley COG's jurisdiction. Senator Rubio is sponsoring legislation to secure Montclair's participation in the San Gabriel Valley COG Housing Trust Fund. The San Bernardino County COG is presently considering formation of a housing trust fund. Addressing homelessness. Homelessness remains a serious issue in Montclair, the region, and throughout California. Through the regionally recognized leadership of the Montclair Code Enforcement Bureau in addressing homelessness issues, code enforcement and the EDA are engaging with local organizations to promote programs designed to address homelessness, including developing a shelter program. City staff recently met with the operator of the 34-unit Welcome Inn Motel to discuss leasing or purchasing the property for use as a temporary housing facility for members of Montclair's homeless population. City staff will continue to seek state grants for acquisition of potential housing facilities and supportive and educational services for the homeless. Acquisition of Odin Homeless Management Information System. To assist the Code Enforcement Special Unit and Montclair Police and Fire Departments with homeless interactions, the city is in the process of acquiring Odin Homeless Management Information System software. This software will enable city staff to promote personnel safety, support positive outcomes for homeless persons, organize outreach and support services, conduct investigations, provide facial recognition, allow first responders to conduct medical or psychological evaluations on scene, track bed availability in shelters, and provide access to free vouchers for support services. Care Court. Montclair will also engage with the San Bernardino County Department of Public Health in implementing Governor Newsom's Care Court concept. In April 2022, SB 1338, the Community Assistance Recovery and Empowerment Court Program, was introduced. The care component of Care Court is a new mental health process intended to assist people living with under or untreated schizophrenia spectrum or other psychotic disorders who lack medical decision-making capacity, many of whom are unhoused. Governor Newsom has asked the state legislature to approve Care Court as part of the fiscal year 22-23 state budget, including $65 million for administration of Care Court. Addressing the potential for a California recession and establishing an inflation control expenditure fund. The economy of California is the largest in the United States, with a $3.5 trillion nominal gross state product as of December 2021. However, economists studying the state suggest that key indicators point to a heightened risk of a recession within 2 years, with some arguing the odds are 50-50 that will happen in the next 12 months. Inflation is a contributing cause of recession. Governor Newsom's 2022 May budget revise includes shock absorbers designed to address continuing higher inflation that translates into state services that may cost more than estimated in the state's budget. Montclair's fiscal year 2022-23 proposed operating budget incorporates a shock absorber fund that anticipates higher than anticipated costs due to inflation. Within the Special Purpose Reserve Fund is an allocation of $500,000 assigned to an inflation control expenditure fund. City Council is requested to provide the city manager authorization to use the ISEF to address unanticipated cost increase that are directly tied to inflationary factors. City staff will continue to monitor economic conditions, maintain the city's standard practice of due diligence over organizational operations and procedures, and report back to the City Council in the event of any looming economic concerns. Promote housing and commercial and industrial development projects throughout the Montclair community. Promoting development throughout the Montclair community pursuant to the guidelines of an updated general plan would improve the overall quality of life throughout the community and improve the city's sales and property tax base. Citywide development. A number of housing, commercial, and logistics projects have already been completed in the city's southern sector, including the Cardenas Market Center, with other projects under development. Tiki Drive-In. A site plan for development of this property has completed review, and the project is expected to go before the Montclair Planning Commission in June and to the City Council in August. West Valley Connector Project. The West Valley Connector Project, a 100% zero-emission bus rapid transit system, is expected to promote access along Holt Boulevard from the City of Pomona to Ontario International Airport as Phase 1. Montclair City staff will work to provide direct connections from the two stations in Montclair to other points in the city. Holt and Mission Boulevard corridors. The city manager and the city's economic development team are working with Congresswoman Norma J. Torres to develop federal assistance to enhance the Holt and Mission Boulevard corridors through Pomona, Montclair, and Ontario. San Antonio Creek Trail. The San Antonio Creek Trail will consist of a vibrant, connected, and safe multi-use greenway path that will run north-south through the entire city. Montclair was awarded approximately $4.2 million in funding by the California Department of Transportation for a pilot phase of this project. 2021 issue of lease revenue bonds. Over the next 4 years, city staff will complete infrastructure projects identified by the City Council for improvement. In April 2022, the City Council approved the award of a contract for development of a parks master plan. The consultant is visiting each park, will solicit public input, and is expected to submit the plan during the first quarter of 2023. In April 2022, Congresswoman Norma Torres announced that the city was a recipient of a $2 million community services grant for improvements to Saratoga Park. In the second quarter of 2023, the city anticipates the opening of the Rita Ranch Park. In 2020, the city was awarded a $5.1 million grant from the Proposition 68 statewide park program grant awards to assist with completion of this park. Employee wage compensation analysis. Internal compensation practices can become stale and out of alignment with external market data impacting recruitment and retention. The City of Montclair budget has achieved a level of fiscal health that allows for an external-based wage compensation analysis that can lead to a pay policy such as the maintenance of average wages based on a comparison of survey agencies. The city manager recommends that during fiscal year 22-23, an external wage compensation analysis be conducted to determine cost-related impacts associated with adjusting classifications based on a pay policy of average of survey cities. Employee inflation bonus adjustment. Inflation in California is at its highest level in 40 years. To help ease the inflation burden on employees, the city manager recommends offering full-time and part-time employees an inflation bonus adjustment. The IBA would be provided to each full-time and part-time employee of the City of Montclair hired before July 1, 2022, who is employed and actively and regularly working in the position hired into. The IBA would not be provided to any employee who, prior to July 1, 2022, has been on administrative leave or has otherwise not been regularly and actively working at his or her regular place of employment with the city for 30 days or more between January 1, 2022 and July 1, 2022. The city manager recommends a $1,500 IBA for each full-time employee and a $1,000 IBA for each part-time employee for a total of $375,000. Funds for the IBA will be allocated from the Special Purpose Reserve Fund for unanticipated personnel expenditures. Flashing stop sign replacement program. The City Council has demonstrated a commitment to the adopted Safe Routes to School program. A permitted manual on uniform traffic control devices upgrade for the SRTS program is the installation of flashing stop signs at designated points throughout the community. City staff estimates that the average cost per flashing stop sign is approximately $1,800, not including installation. An estimated 433 stop signs are installed throughout the city. Based on GIS mapping data, city staff estimates that approximately 250 stop sign locations may potentially warrant an upgrade to the flashing stop sign configuration at a cost of approximately $450,000, with installation costing approximately $100,000. The city manager recommends allocating approximately $250,000 from the general fund unassigned reserve and $300,000 from the 2021 issue of lease revenue bonds for the program. City staff will report back to the City Council for approval of program funding and identification of installation locations.
Okay, any questions on this portion? Go ahead,
Mr. Mayor?
go ahead, Bill.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. One, in regard to the San Gabriel Valley Housing Trust Fund, I know there's a minimum buy-in amount from every city. Have we put money aside for that?
Yes, we have. There's $30,000 in the
Right.
city council budget for joining the San Gabriel Valley COG, rather the Housing Trust Fund related to the
Housing
San
Trust
Gabriel Valley
Fund,
COG.
which is, yeah, although the Housing Trust Fund falls under the COG, it's somewhat separate. I also wanted to note about the homeless. It's, it's good what we're doing with the Welcome In, but I'd like to see down the line if we can do something that might be a little more innovative. I know recently I've toured in the city of Baldwin Park. They have a tiny home village of 25 units, about 60 square feet. They look like something you'd see at the beach. They even have an Adirondack chair in front of it. They have wraparound services. They have everything. They have nutritional services. The goal is essentially some more, some less, but roughly 90 days from being homeless to transitional housing and supportive services or a job. And the city of Montebello, although these two cities are somewhat far afield from Montclair, is going to be doing something similar. I'd like to see, and we wouldn't have it in the budget now, but to look down the line at seeing what we can do with that, because I think it would really go a long way to solving the problem. If I were to just wave a magic wand, I would focus it on the homeless veterans, but it's something we need to think about. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, staff about 3 months ago did meet with a developer who does projects similar to what Mayor Pro Tem Rude described. And while we have not heard back from the developer, even though we did engage him at that particular event that we attended, we do plan on looking at that as a possible alternative.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, because at least I do not yet know about Montebello, but I do know about the units in Baldwin Park. The total cost for everything was about $1.2 million, and they anticipate it's about $800,000 a year in the ongoing operating costs. When you figure it's amortized over 100 people a year going through the program, that's a bargain compared to a lot of other things right now.
Thank you.
100 people at $800,000 comes out to $8,000 a person over a year. That's fairly cost effective. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a lot of really wonderful things in this budget, and I'll detail all of them when we get to the end. But at this point, I have a couple of questions. I've been hearing for, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months that there was going to be some provision in this budget for people who contract with the city to do case management, and I'm not seeing it there. Is it there and I'm just not seeing it, or can you point me to where it is?
Human Services Program has always had a case manager.
For homeless?
Well, not for homeless, but for senior citizens and other individuals who need that kind of service. What you're talking about is a program that our code enforcement supervisor, Gabe Fondario, is working on with various groups in the community. That program has not been fleshed out yet, so there was no way for it to be funded as part of this next year's budget. So once the program is defined and we know what the costs are, we can bring that back to the city council.
Do we have to do that, and we have to wait a year to do that, or we can do that beforehand?
No, he would bring it back, we would bring it back as an agenda item, and then it would be recommending at that point in time.
And then my second question at this point was about, Ms. Colback talked about some repairs, but my question is, I didn't see anything in there for home repair for low mods or for seniors who can't keep their property up. This stuff we used to use for redevelopment for.
Yes, and we cannot budget for that sort of activity, at least not with our city funds, because it is considered a gift of public funds. Back when we had the redevelopment agency, there were not the same sorts of restrictions on redevelopment funds. Unfortunately, that restriction is on our current funding, so we have to develop grants in order to engage in that kind of a program. So that is certainly something that we are looking at, and when those grants are available for that opportunity, that, again, will be brought back to the city council.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I think Carissa, you were,
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Is the IBA, the inflation bonus adjustment, is that treated as a one-time bonus or more like a raise moving forward?
No, that's a bonus. It has no ongoing impact beyond the provision of the amount approved.
And that'll be paid one time? or-
Yes, one time only.
I mean, in one lump sum versus,
One lump sum minus taxes.
okay, thank you.
okay, that's yours, Ben.
Just one quick question following up on that. The IBA money, if I am correct, it is non-PERSable, correct?
It is non-PERSable because it is not an ongoing payment.
Right, thank you.
Okay, Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few questions. First of all, I did forget one in the last segment. There would be 3 part-time benefited positions, correct?
Yes, there are only 3 remaining.
Yes, two of them are vacant. There's only one that's filled at this point.
The 3 positions would be fire department, and which are the other 2?
There's 2 in Information Technology Division. The system specialist, I believe I had it written down. Get back to that page. It is a system specialist and an IT systems technician. So they're funded, but they're vacant.
Okay, all right. Regarding contracting out for services, you mentioned fire code inspection, solid waste, which is obviously Burtec. I eventually would like to see us maintain in-house the duties that are carried out by a fire marshal. I know that, what was it, 2 years ago, we eliminated the position?
About that, yes. Maybe a little longer.
Because I just am not hearing some pleasing things regarding the company in which we are using for some of those services. And I think in-house, when we did have it in-house with Mr. Sherwood, things were a little bit more adequately addressed than presently exists. So with respect to that, I'd like to see that brought back in-house if we could at any time in the future.
Well, I know we're not on the Building a Better Montclair section here, so we're going back to the prior sections. But I think, unless staff's telling me that we're getting bad service, I do believe we're getting good services out of the current contract. Am I correct, Ed?
Yes, I would have to respectively disagree. I don't know where that information would be coming from, but from a staff's perspective, we are very pleased with the operation of the contract services. We believe that we are getting a much higher level of service. We have access to a variety of different professionals at the company. And again, I think from the perspective of developers and from staff, the response and the thoroughness of the detail is far greater than anything that we've ever experienced in the past.
Regarding the Economic Development Agency, I'm reading here from your synopsis, the EDA will assume the role of the formal RDA in the promotion of economic development activity in the city and the pursuit of funding to develop affordable housing in the community. My question is one of caution. Could anyone basically say, for all intents and purposes, we are circumventing the elimination of RDAs by creating one and in effect sticking a different label on the entity?
No, absolutely not, because it doesn't function under the Community Redevelopment Agency law of the state of California, which actually no longer exists. Right. And it will function within the parameters that are designed for it as a agency or department within the organization. So the identification of it as an agency is to actually give it more credibility so that when it goes out and creates things like operating zones, there is a greater reluctance on the part of state agencies to work with a department of a organization, of a city, municipal government, but when they perceive it as a quasi-independent agency, the perception is that it has greater operating authority, and we are more likely to achieve greater success through that process. But it will not be following Community Redevelopment Agency law because that law no longer exists.
Regarding,
And I just want to pinpoint that, excuse me, I think one of the things, one of the things we are doing in this budget and as a city is we are trying to expand our economic development opportunities here in Montclair, the importance of that. I think we all agree that we're all changing, the society is changing, the economics is changing, so it's very important for us to have a strong economic outlook of where we're going, and just having an agency puts a priority over it. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
regarding housing and homelessness, if we, in your report, it states that at the future time, if San Bernardino County enacts something similar to the San Gabriel Valley COG, is it your intention for us to be a member of both agencies or just remove ourselves from San Gabriel Valley and in the event that San Bernardino County enacts it, join San Bernardino County solely?
So it might be premature for me to respond to that question. We're evaluating both. One, we have not been accepted into the San Gabriel Valley Housing Trust Fund at this point in time. The legislation does have to be approved by the legislature, so we need to get to that point. And then San Bernardino County, as you indicated, council member, is in the process of developing a housing trust fund. We had a meeting this morning, staff, to go over the basic parameters of what they are defining. There's a lack of clarity We don't know what their funding source is. We believe that based on the information we were looking at this morning, the funding will come from the agencies themselves. So that would indicate to us that maybe they're really talking about a high membership fee, and then everything else will be developed by grants. But because there is no clear definition right now as it relates to the county's proposal, it's difficult for us to respond. However, we are going to tell the San Bernardino County COG that we remain very interested and highly likely that we would be agreeable to joining the COG's program and that we will participate in its development. But we also want to hold out for membership in the San Gabriel Valley COG at this time, because at least there, we know that under Senator Rubio's administrative assistance to that particular program, they've developed far more external funding as far as that particular housing trust fund, probably more so than any other COG throughout the state of California. We've looked at other COGs in the area, and we just don't see the type of funding that has been available. So, for example, in the San Gabriel Valley COG, Senator Rubio developed $30 million in funding. And you might recall that maybe a couple of months ago, there was an article in the newspaper where Claremont had committed about $1.5 million to affordable housing. That was all from the San Gabriel Valley COG. None of it came from the city. And that is based on a $30,000 membership annually. So they were getting far more back based on that membership than clearly what they were putting in. So we think at this point in time that the San Gabriel Valley COG's Housing Trust Fund would be the far more beneficial program for us to participate in. But we are going to wait to see what San Gabriel Valley COG comes up with. And it may be beneficial for us to be in both if we can.
Are we the only city on this side of the county line that is in the works with the new legislation that the senator is proposing to include into San Gabriel Valley?
We are the only city that is actively interested. The other two cities that are in the legislation are Chino and Ontario. And in my latest communication with Senator Rubio, neither of those two cities have responded back in an outreach to her that they were interested. Now, the interesting part about that is that the legislation provides that the three cities would be a voting block in and of itself. In other words, we'd have one vote as part of the COG, and that we would vote amongst ourselves as to which city would be representing the three cities. I've recommended, and I believe that Senator Rubio is going to agree to it, that the language will be changed so that it's rotational. But if the other two cities do not join, then Montclair will have a standing vote every year that we remain in the trust fund.
My concern with the rotation of votes shared amongst the three cities is a mentality shared perhaps by some in the region that since we're small, we'll be swallowed up with respect to standing power, need, whatnot. And of course, I would disagree with those sentiments. That would be just my concern, given the fact that Ontario, Chino are much bigger in size, population, money generated and whatnot. I don't think it negates the importance of our needs, and that would be my only concern with respect to that approach.
Right.
But I digress.
Actually, what's interesting is that not every city of the San Gabriel Valley COG has a vote. I think it's limited to maybe 13 different member votes. And so whether Montclair is in it alone or Montclair is in it with Chino and Ontario or Chino, our vote actually would outweigh the majority of the cities in San Gabriel Valley COG because of the, I believe, 28 cities, maybe it's 32 cities in the San Gabriel Valley COG. If they only have 13 votes, then the three cities in the San Bernardino side, or if it's just Montclair and we still have only one vote, comparatively speaking, as far as the trust fund is concerned, that one vote, either for Montclair alone or for the three cities or two cities, however it works out, is going to be far more influential and powerful than the other cities in San Gabriel Valley.
And regarding the temporary homeless housing facility, you list the property, well, the Welcome Inn Motel. Are there any other locations along either Mission or Holt that are being considered for potential locations such as this?
That's the only site that has approached the city and demonstrated interest. Doesn't mean that we won't look for other potential sites, and we have. In fact, years ago, we talked to a property owner who actually has a motel in the backside of his property, and we were interested in that as a potential site, but the developer was uninterested in coming to terms with the city on that. So we are pursuing other alternatives, but this is the one that seems most likely to occur at this time, only because the property owner is interested in developing this relationship with the city.
If I'm not mistaken, this property is close to Cadota Street, which puts it right near the Montclair-Pomona border. If the intent is to somehow provide a safe haven, even temporarily, for homeless individuals, I think the location most ideal would be perhaps a little bit more to the east of this location, into the inner parts of the city, as opposed to that particular proximity to some other areas in a neighboring city. I'm trying to be delicate here. I just don't think that location would provide a safe haven for homeless that legitimately want to escape other avenues and dangers out in public by virtue of being homeless. I think they deserve something more, and let's move it into the inner parts of the city. That would be my concern. Although I wouldn't be opposed to that particular site, I just don't think it is ideal. In the report you mentioned, or Ms. Colbeck mentioned, the care component and the care court provisions. And I know that this is working its way through the legislature, and perhaps it might become law after this session, taking effect next year, depending on the legislature's actions. I just think that if those provisions are enacted, and as your report states that there would be a penalty to each of the counties if they failed to participate in the program, and therefore, by virtue of that, us as a city, I think we're going to come into some headway and some trouble in forcibly mandating that folks seek medical treatment and compelled treatment of, I believe the report listed individuals that have schizophrenic spectrum of symptoms or whatnot. I just don't see how you could forcibly force someone into housing or services other than them going to prison. I just don't see that. I just see it as problematic.
Understand your concern, and that has certainly been expressed by a number of opponents to the proposed legislation. Essentially, it is a reversion back to the way the programs did operate in the state of California prior to the late 1960s. When California operated a series of mental health facilities throughout the state. Of course, the reputation of those facilities is what causes a lot of concern by opponents to the program now. The governor has stated that there would be no reversion back to the type of practices and procedures that occurred in those institutions at that time, and that this would be a much more refined and well-operated process. There would be a mandate, of course, when an individual goes before a care court, that if they're ordered into the program, you're correct, it is a mandate. They would not have an alternative. The governor's also stated that prison would not be an option, or other forms of severe treatment would not be an option, except in the case of if the individual came into the care court program through prison, and in the care court program, the individual proved to be uncooperative or would not otherwise be amenable to change through the Care Court program, then that individual would not be released back into the general public, but he would or she would go back into prison. So that's the only reference that the governor made where a situation like that would occur where a person would end up in prison through the Care Court program. So understanding your concerns, understanding the concerns that counties would be penalized. Mayor Dutray and I attended a mayor city manager meeting about 3 weeks ago. And in that meeting, there was a clear demonstration, at least from the West End cities that were participating in that meeting, that they were more than happy to welcome this program and participate in it.
And then finally, with respect to opportunity zones, I'm fine with that concept. I think they're a great idea. I remember when Jack Kemp was alive and he was HUD secretary promoting those. Well, let me ask regarding, because there's an effort mentioned in your report as well that I agree with, and if I understand it correctly, the city taking a position to actively pursue perhaps annexation of properties within our sphere of influence that we could then use to redevelop or for economic develop purposes or what have you. Is it your goal to try to actively pursue property in the southern end of town between Montclair and Chino, and therefore, whenever justified, somehow enact an opportunity, economic opportunity zones in those areas on the southern end of town?
To answer your question, yes, we are very much interested in working with the county to acquire the property for purposes of annexation. I've had meetings with Chief Executive Officer Leonard Hernandez regarding that very issue. The general plan update that we are working on will incorporate a sphere of influence component in which we discuss the development of that area. That area is not currently listed as opportunity zone designated. I don't know why the county had never approached the state to have applications submitted with the federal government Department of Treasury for approval of opportunity zones in that area. But it is quite clear that the sphere of influence at this point in time is not considered an opportunity zone, although one would think that based on the development patterns and the development that is down there, that it should have absolutely been submitted as a Oz. So part of our approach in working with the Chief Executive Officer, Leonard Hernandez, will be that the county needs to apply with the Federal Department of Treasury to secure opportunity zone designation for that area. The CEO for San Bernardino County is very much interested in Montclair's plans for development and annexation of that area. In fact, right now we are assembling a list of all of the properties that we have down there that we have irrevocable annexation agreements on, so that we can do a tally to see what kind of vote position is in our favor or against us in any particular area of the sphere of influences. All of this will be assembled and it will be part of our proposal to the county's CEO, so that we can work with them to make the city's approach to annexation workable. We've also told the county that in order for this to work, the county has to cooperate with the city on providing funding. And one way for the county to do that is that when community redevelopment agencies were removed from operation in 2012, the property tax increment had to be distributed between the various taxing agencies in each respective redevelopment area where a taxing agency operated. The County of San Bernardino is one of those taxing agencies. They received, last time I asked finance, they received at least $2 million a year from the property tax increment. They're probably actually higher than that now. The city's property tax increment component goes up annually, so I would expect that they're maybe at least in the neighborhood of $2.5 million now. And we've told the county that they need to give us that money back on an annual basis, that They just need to step away from that particular windfall that they received. CEO Hernandez has indicated that he would be more than willing to cooperate with the city on that particular issue. I even mentioned to him that we had done a cost analysis on annexation of a particular segment of the SOI, and that was the easternmost segment back in the late 1990s. And based on that analysis, the city had estimated it would be about $10 million to do infrastructure improvements in that area. The moment I said that, the CEO said, "I'll give you the $10 million." I said, "Well, no, it's going to cost a lot more than that, and that was only for this one quadrant. So we're talking about a lot more money." And he said, "Let's talk about it, and we'll try to fund it." So we are actively working with the county to make this happen.
And don't we own a potential parkland down that area that we got from the county perhaps 20, 30 years ago?
Yes, yeah, probably closer to 35 or so, but yes, you're in the ballpark, and I think it's about 5 acres. Yes.
Okay, and then is the property on the northeast corner of Central and Phillips into consideration with respect to staff on acquiring? I believe it's 6.5 acres or 9 acres, I forget which is the number.
Is that vacant parcel?
That's 11255 Central Avenue?
Oh, is that church property?
Yes, the old church property.
Yeah, no, it's not, because it's not in the city, and so we didn't want to, I'm sorry,
It's county, but it's,
yeah.
okay. Well, I would, I think it'd be beneficial if we pursue that property.
Yes, our concern would be that it's not in the city. Yes, did we acquire property back in 35 years ago? We did. Should we have is another question. I'm not going to answer that question. So I think we should be very careful about buying property outside the city. I don't think it's to our interest at this time to do that because any development there is not going to benefit us because we don't get any tax benefit from it. We don't get any property tax benefit
Right.
from it. So I would not suggest it.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think, Mr.
Miss-
LaRue, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me lower my hand. Couple of things. One, the San Gabriel Valley Housing Trust Fund. I would hope that if the legislation is successful, that we can join. We do share a common line between Claremont and Pomona, two cities that have successfully used the money. The San Gabriel Valley Housing Trust Fund, not every city in the San Gabriel Valley is in the trust fund. Those that are have used it very successfully, and I know that they are pleased with the results. I think it would be to our benefit to join that, and also there's a synergy if we work with our neighbors in Claremont and Pomona. That being said, if San Bernardino County were to come up with something, I think it should be something that we would benefit from. I think it would be wise for us to join them. The caveat I have with that is, from what my rudimentary understanding is, it would be a county-wide housing trust. So we would be looking at housing that might go in near Parker Dam in Arizona. I mean, the San Bernardino County side, up in the high desert, in areas on the way to Las Vegas. It's a large county. And I don't know if we would be subsumed by some of the larger entities out there or needs that are considered greater than ours. I certainly am always of the opinion that if the more the better. 2 sources of funding is better than 1 source of funding. So I would hope we would look into that. I certainly think these cities in the San Gabriel Valley would be welcoming of us. I can't speak for all of them. I'm not going to say much, but I've talked to several cities already, and they seem to be pleased that Montclair would join. If we get to the point where San Bernardino County has one, join that one too, if it makes sense. I wanted to comment on the issue of the homeless. It is my understanding, and I could be incorrect on this, that in the state of California, if we want to remove, have somebody who's homeless, we say, you know, you can't stay here, you can't sit on this corner. We have to have a place for them to go. And I'm not worried that homeless in another city might come in and want to use the Welcome Inn, because most of the time with the homeless, you have to show they have a connection to the city. And some homeless person from another city may not have that connection to Montclair. So I certainly think any solution is better than no solution at all. I'd rather see the homeless off the street in a place where they can start to heal, start to become better. The misconception out there is that all the homeless are criminals. Certainly they are not. And I won't go into statistics tonight. As far as opportunity zones, I agree with what's been said. I think it's a good idea. Not only were they put forward during the time that Secretary Kemp was the Secretary of Housing, during the Obama administration, they put forward restarting these opportunity zones. And I believe some of them looked, one plan at the time looked at the area that would be right around the Metrolink in Montclair as an opportunity zone. So anything we can do to increase economic activity would be great. Thank you.
I believe the Opportunity Zone came out of the Trump administration, am I correct?
It came out of the 2017 tax
Yeah.
Bill, yes.
Part-
I think, believe what Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Rue is referring to are the economic zones of the
Yes.
early 2000s, which were abolished in 2012.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will say this, I do appreciate the employee inflation bonus adjustment being here. I think it's a good way to at least give our employees some compensation adjustments because of inflation. I know a lot of employees drive cars that come to work here, so this will at least give them some more gas money, money to help pay for gas, excuse me. And then the second one here is the flashing stop signs. I appreciate this being in the budget as well. This is an issue that I'm hearing more and more about from the public about traffic safety. And I've had several people who've seen these flashing signs there at Vernon Middle School and asking, can we add it to other intersections? So I appreciate this being in here too. This is what the public wants. So with that, unless I'm hearing one, you're ready to go for the next section here? Okay. All right, so we're going to move on then, and we'll go ahead with the special purpose funds.
Thank you. So we'll discuss now the general fund special purpose funds. Special purpose funds established to address current and future liabilities, programs, projects, and goals requiring a commitment of funds not incorporated into the general fund operating budget. The CalPERS unanticipated normal cost retains $2.5 million. The technology account retains $750,000 after a transfer out to the self-insurance special reserve fund. Self-insurance fund retains $1.6 million after transfers in from other special reserve funds. And the building maintenance fund retains $1 million. Unanticipated personnel adjustment fund retains $1 million. Equipment replacement fund retains $2,245,541 for equipment acquisitions. This reflects a reduction of $185,200 plus a transfer in of $80,741 from the general fund operating budget. The OPEB retirement medical liability retains $1.5 million. Contingency account retains $200,000 for unanticipated expenditures. UAL POB amortization service fund retains $3 million. Parking facility development retains $2.3 million for parking facility development, and the proposed inflation control expenditure fund retains $500,000. The total estimated all special purpose funds, $16,681,804 after proposed equipment replacement fund uses. The 2014 issue of lease revenue bonds, payment period fiscal year 2014 to 2045. Debt service 2014 issue of lease revenue bonds, the issue amount was $45 million. It was used to defease the balance of the 2005 issue and provided approximately $22 million in additional funding for infrastructure projects. The 2014 issue of lease revenue bond funds have been exhausted. Annual debt service is approximately $2.6 million, with the funding source for the annual debt service being the general fund revenue. 2021 issue of lease revenue bonds, payment period fiscal year 2022 to 2051. The 2021 issue of lease revenue bond provided $45 million for funding for infrastructure improvement projects throughout the city. The remaining balance is approximately $44.73 million. Annual debt service is approximately $2.4 million through fiscal year 2050-51, and the funding source is general fund revenue. The 2021 issue of pension obligation bonds, payment period fiscal year 2021 to 2041. The 2021 issue of pension obligation bond, issue amount was $62,190,000. The purpose was to pay off our unfunded accrued liability with CalPERS. Annual debt service is approximately $4.44 million, and the funding source is general fund revenue. The proposed budget conclusion. Fiscal year 2022-23 general fund operating budget, successful and balanced budget, utilizes a number of funds and strategies to achieve balance. Improved sales tax revenues combined with increased transactions and use tax earnings generated by Measure F and Measure L contribute to the city's ability to recover in the post-COVID-19 pandemic era. The fiscal year 22-23 proposed budget incorporates the following debt service funds: the 2014 issue of lease revenue bonds, the 2021 issue of lease revenue bonds, and the 2021 issue of pension obligation bonds. The fiscal year 22-23 budget as proposed also incorporates the allocation of funds for the following: $3 million to the UAL POBAF pursuant to the UAL POBAF pension policy, $2.3 million to the Public Parking Facility Development Fund, $500,000 to the Inflation Control Expenditure Fund, and $1.5 million to the Economic Development Assets Fund. During fiscal year 22-23, city staff will ask the City Council to consider a ballot proposal seeking voter approval of a commercial cannabis sales tax measure. Going forward, city staff will routinely look at fresh approaches for service delivery, continue to evaluate grants and outside funding opportunities, seek to develop strategies to improve both the appearance and infrastructure of the community, promote new revenue concepts, pursue development of the city's commercial and residential base, promote economic development opportunities by drawing on the city's past and effective promotion of redevelopment, continue to develop the city's expanding partnership with CIM Group for investments in North Montclair, and work with legislatures and the City Council to move Montclair forward. So this concludes our fiscal year 2020-23
Okay, let's do this.
proposed
Let's-
budget review presentation.
Let's take about a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene at 7:35.
I grabbed the city attorney, so. Yeah, it's difficult. No, I'm good, thanks. Oh, thank goodness. I think this is the best I've done in all my presentations so far, and I'm trying to talk faster to get out of here because it's so hot. So, but yeah, I think this is one of my best ones so far that I've done. So,
Mr. Mayor, could you have those speaking, please speak up a little more clearly into the microphone? It's difficult to hear on Zoom. Thank you.
Hi, Bill. We're actually on a 5-minute break right now.
Okay, thank you. I did not hear that. Thank you.
We'll resume at 7:35.
Okay, so we have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, you were off by one on the election.
Okay, so we'll come back into session at 7:39, and just one question on the fire engine. I know we're waiting. We're hoping by no later than Labor Day we have an answer on the grant. Am I correct, Ed?
September sometime, is that Labor Day?
September sometime.
Okay.
And then if we don't get the grant, we're gonna proceed with an acquisition of the fire engine, and those monies will come out of the equipment replacement fund, which is has something. What's it?
2.2.
2.2.
Correct.
And I think we talked about that last year too. So, all right. So I just wanted to clarify that. So this is a good opportunity. Any further questions or any comments about the budget, or you have a wish list? So maybe I'll start to my left, Carissa.
Yes, I have one comment. Well, I noticed that the budget allows for some promotions, and I just want to say that they are so well deserved. We have had an incredibly difficult last 3 or so years, and the Marcia Richter and Janet Colbeck, both of you have really had to shoulder a lot more responsibility than probably in the years preceding those, and also the department heads, staff members have done just an incredible job. So I'm happy to see that you are all being recognized and granted those promotions. The city and the city manager's done a really good job of keeping the reserve as close as possible to that 25%. In the future, I know we're aiming for the 50, and it looks like the reason that it's gone down a little bit is because we are repaying some COVID-related expenses and probably anticipating a recession. Knock on wood that doesn't happen, but if we are able to right now purchase vehicles, make sure that the departments have what they need to move forward, that's incredible, because we might not have that ability to in the next couple of years, and I hope that doesn't happen, but it's always a possibility. So I think it's a very well-balanced, well-put-together budget, and I appreciate that there's a nice little summary for us to review and understand what all the numbers mean. And I'm hopeful. If you look at the numbers, even before COVID, our revenue is fantastic. We're really doing well as a city, and I hope that it continues that way. But in the event that we have some setbacks, we have a reserves and a balanced budget to take care of us in the meantime. That's all.
Denise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've already asked my 2 questions, and we can have another conversation about that offline. But I have some overall things that I wanted to say about this budget. First and foremost, kudos to Ms. Colbeck and Mr. Starr. I know that it took you a very long time to go into all of this and all of this detail, and I appreciate the work that you've done. There are a couple of high points, I think. One is, Mr. Starr, you're not going anywhere anytime soon, but it looks like you're planning for succession. You're doing some succession planning, which is good, because, you might hit the lottery tomorrow. It appears to me that the leadership team is being broadened to take on more responsibility, and I think that's a wonderful thing that will help. Overall, it will help all of us here at City Hall and also throughout the city. So kudos to both of you for that. Well, to Mr. Starr for that. And I'm really kind of tickled about the inflation bonus adjustment, because people are really struggling, particularly since, you go to the gas station. I went the other day, and I'm holding the nozzle, and I said, okay, I'm going to stop when it hits 7. Okay, I'm going to stop when it hits 100. I'm going to stop when it hits 100, and it was like $120, and I don't think I'm special. So, people really need that money, and so that's a wonderful thing. It doesn't have to happen every year, but for now, I think there are a lot of staff who are really going to need that, and that's a wonderful thing to be able to provide for them. I'm also tickled. It appears, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that all of our positions, 199 of them plus 3, are fully funded. They might not be filled, but at least they're funded. And so when we can get through the recruitment process, we will be fully staffed. So I'm excited about that. But I'm really the most excited about those flashing stop signs. I'm very, very happy about that. I anticipated, when we've talked about it before, I anticipated that there would maybe, if I was lucky, we'd maybe have some funding for traffic studies or something, but to see that it's actually in the budget, then it would actually happen at some point this year has just made my heart warm. So thank you very much, all of you, for all of the work you've done. You've done a fabulous job. Mr. Starr, you are doing a fabulous job as our city manager, and you're going to stay here at least as long as I am, if not longer. That concludes my comments.
You know, Mayor Pro Tem Rue will go last after Bill Lopez. So go ahead, Councilman Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few comments. Measure L no doubt has helped stabilize the budget this year and will stabilize many future budgets to come. I will remind everyone that the voters, their top 2 priorities with respect to increasing funds and them not having a problem with instituting a tax was to make sure that public safety, mainly police, fire, obviously, are shored up and funded and adequately filled with their needs. I think last year's budget and this year's proposed budget make great strides in addressing those concerns of those departments, but I've always been of the opinion, and still am, that irrespective of those gains that we made, there is still plenty that needs to be done with respect to our departments. One of them is, of course, the issue of purchasing a new fire engine, or apparatus, if you will, for the department. I have said from this dais and from public statements and in private conversations that our fire engines currently used, with the exception of perhaps one, are well past their lifetime, and our guys deserve to have a much more amenable, workable apparatus. Our police department has some needs that need to be addressed with staffing, funding, material that they need, and with time, hopefully those issues can be addressed as well. I too am very pleased that the flashing red signs are not just, according to this report, not just going to be relegated to areas deemed within the safe routes to school area designations in the city, but over 200 and some stop signs will be looked at and could potentially see flashing stop signs in the city. I think it would be a great problem to have if residents started showing up at the podium here stating, hey, we are constantly seeing these flashing lights at night. There's just too many of them, because I think we will have solved our objective if that were the case. I'd rather have too many than too little. So I appreciate the fact that there's a designated amount and an effort to address that. That said, I know that our Safe Routes to Schools plan regarding all the school sites in the city's jurisdiction, there are other needs that need to be addressed and recommendations in those studies, like speed bumps, speed humps, or striping, curbing, what have you, redoing some walkways and intersections and whatnot. And let's not just be satisfied with the stop signs, but let's hope we can address and implement those other recommendations in the upcoming year or the subsequent one. The public, those concerned parents that have been here at the podium and have chimed in via Zoom and online and even social media, they want to see something tangible where they can see progress being made, and these stop signs are a small evidence of something being done to assuage their legitimate concerns. So I appreciate that effort. I know that generally I have asked, even when we were here a year ago with respect to the budget that is now going to lapse, I had asked regarding COVID pay issues for employees that went above and beyond during the height of the pandemic, if there could be some type of compensation for them. I wish that we would have implemented that, considering that other neighboring cities and those in the region use some of the money that they got from the feds to do just that. However, I do like the fact that there is an inflationary protective account to address any inflation costs to the city that we may be incurring. or actually forced upon us by virtue of expenses that we must need, and we have to accommodate for the difference in inflationary costs. But the additional $1,500, $1,000, I believe, is the recommendation to employees. It's a small drop in the bucket, but nonetheless, it's a drop. It'll help them out, and I think our employees throughout the entire organization deserve that. Let me ask, since we're on the topic, and I know at the last council meeting Monday, I brought up the issue about speed bumps versus humps and how residents were concerned given the recent high-speed unfortunate accidents in the city. Where in the budget does the potential for new speed bumps, speed humps come into play in addressing those needs throughout the city? Where is it an ongoing need or demand, or do we have a certain designated time within the budget to designate in implementing and incorporating some new ones in town?
Well, the installation of speed bumps or speed humps is on a demand basis, so we don't budget for it. But if we are find the need to install them, then it just simply gets absorbed in the budget. It's not even something that we necessarily come back to the city council for, unless we are going to do a lot of them and then we get a contract and have a significant cost. So that's when it would typically come back to the city council. Otherwise, it's just absorbed in the public works budget through their materials and supplies and other services. The issue, of course, with speed humps and speed bumps is that you are restricted as to where they can go. I know a lot of people ask for them in certain areas, but there are speed limits, as the chief indicated at the last meeting, and I'm certainly a public works director already, would also be on board with this position, is that if it believe it's above 25 miles per hour, you simply can't put speed humps in streets, because we're prohibited from doing that by the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices and probably the vehicle code. Speed bumps are a parking lot use where cars are already typically going a slower speed, so when they hit that sharp, short width bump, there's not an adverse impact on the car, or the driver doesn't lose control of the vehicle. So speed bumps are never used on city streets. Speed humps are, but again, there is a restriction on the speed limit for the street where they're permitted. And most of the requests that we do get in are typically on streets where the speed limit is above 25 miles per hour, and therefore it's not a solution. So for example, earlier this week, there was a request from a resident that we put a speed hump, I believe it was on Palo Verde as it turns into Helena. And the speed limit on that particular area, I believe, is around 35 miles per hour, so we can't put a speed hump there. We've already put flashing lights and street markings to indicate to drivers that they need to slow, that there's a bend in the road, and they need to adjust their speed accordingly. And beyond that, I don't know what more we can do. We even have, I believe, we have barricades at the end of Palo Verde, at the east end, with reflective lights on them to alert people that you're coming to a bend. So those are the things we can do, that we're permitted to do under the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. Speed humps simply aren't available at that particular location. They may be further south on Helena, where the speed limit might have to be adjusted to below 35 miles per hour. But I don't know if that location would address the problem where people are coming off of Palo Verde at a relatively higher speed. So we'll continue to look at it and other options and solutions that are available to us. But again, with speed humps, they can only be put in certain street applications, and that's a restriction on us imposed by state law.
Thank you, sir, for the explanation. I appreciate the emphasis on the opportunity zones in the budget. I appreciate the desire to look at annexing spheres of influence or land or areas where we can develop, and be of an economic benefit to the community and our budget. I would hope that we would aggressively look at taking in more of the property in the southern end of town and utilizing it to our benefit. Compared to last year's budget, this is a budget that really hasn't strayed too far from last year's budget, in my opinion. In that there's no drastic changes of any kind. It seems like it's continual, and I am comfortable with it. There are some aspects of the budget I don't like, and that is perhaps with the ESG issue, and maybe I'll bring that up on the night that we vote on this. But overall, I am pleased. As I said last year, there are some things in it I could do without, but in the overall grand scheme of things, and actually I think that was my exact verbiage I even used last year, so I'm consistent. This is a budget that is to be commended. The fact that we have over $7 million in reserves, and we still have some savings of, I believe, 2-point-some million. I'm pleased to see that the equipment replacement fund has actually increased, and we will get that engine. But overall, I am pleased. So thank you to Janet and every department that contributed their portion, and the city manager staff on this. I appreciate it. Unless, I think I've touched on everything I wanted to. If I could, Mr. Starr, before I forget, your letter to Senator Rubio and your full transit center property analysis, if I could get a copy of that, I'd be very interested to see that, please, as well as, there was one other thing. You mentioned in your report that the California Opportunity Zone portal demonstrates significant areas within Montclair as opportunity zone or designations as such. Could I also get that as well? Because obviously the link is not in our binder, but if I can get that report as well, because I think I was pleased to hear that even they thought we had potential for those zones, and I'm curious to see where they're at and the potential that could lie ahead. With that, Mr. Mayor, I am done for the moment. Thank you.
Can we touch the ESG since you brought that up? And so I believe the ESG, Ed, is really involves the Montclair Place development, and this is something that CIM Group is champion.
Yes, the economic, social, and governance is a policy, investment policy, as well as a construction practice of CIM Group. They've advised us that this is the type of investment strategy that they were going to deploy for all of the development that will occur on properties that they own in Montclair or acquire. As indicated in the discussion in the agenda report, the amount of investment in ESG is increasing exponentially. It's far outpacing investment than any other investment field, not only nationwide, but worldwide. And even the opponents of climate change find that the opportunity for them to invest in the ESG simply makes practical sense from an investment perspective, simply because it's the direction that the industry itself is going. So this is a policy position of CIM Group. It really doesn't have anything to do with the City of Montclair, other than that we certainly welcome any strategy that improves our community. And with CIM Group projecting the investment of maybe as much as $3 billion in North Montclair, certainly we're going to welcome any investment strategy that they want to bring to our community. So that really is how ESG functions as an investment tool. But from a development tool, it functions in producing a product that meets all sustainability standards and even exceeds the LEED standards that are a typical industry benchmark, or a gold standard really, that the investment industry or the development industry has always used to produce a product that achieves all performance targets in relation to being environmentally friendly, energy friendly. And so ESG is actually an elevated standard above that. And as we find that we are pressured more and more from federal and state legislation to produce a product that meets these higher standards of environmental friendly construction, ESG probably is the best way to go.
Okay, and but this is just clarification, not being mandated for the entire city. Staff's not going to come back and mandate for the entire city, and then this is a vehicle for CIM to capture more investment money to place on the property.
That is correct.
Okay,
Well,
Go ahead.
If HR 8960 is passed and approved, which of course it has a lot of hurdles to jump through before it even gets there, it will be a requirement on localities such as us when it comes to development, and that's part of my concern. If I have no problem with a business entity on their own enacting whatever policies they so desire and want to address some issues in how they operate, that's great. They're to be commended for that. I just, and I believe there's even 3684 is another one.
well,
I just,
I think we're talking about two different things. We have a developer that's advocating this and wants to do this for their properties, and then. you're
And I'm
talking about-
fine with that.
And there's legislation out there that mandates it us. So, okay, so let's go, Mayor Pro Tem Rue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To begin with, I do think this is a good budget. I appreciate staff and everybody else who has put their time and effort into it. I wish we would have more money to put aside into reserves. I say that because the good times don't always last. We will hopefully not see that, but there will become a time in the future where we're going to wish we had a little more money in reserve. Saying that, I think staff did a very good job. I think we need to look very, and I'm going to emphasize, very carefully at Measure L. Right now, we're a beneficiary of good times. There will come a time when Measure L may not be producing the revenue it is now. Therefore, we need to be careful how we use that money. I am always hesitant when we have too many long-term commitments. We need to be careful when we hire, because that's a long-term commitment out into the future that we're going to be responsible for. And Measure L money may not always be there. I think we also need to be careful how we treat Measure L. Measure L is a general tax, not a specific or a dedicated tax. And we need to be careful that we don't treat it as such. It's also not a piggy bank. Having said that, I think staff has done a good job with this. We'll see what the next year brings. I appreciate the efforts on housing. I would like to someday say that everybody who works in Montclair can live in Montclair, whether they're a minimum wage worker or whether there's a CEO. If we are truly going to start making inclusive and holistic communities, we're going to have to consider that. Not everybody will be able to drive a car distances to go to work. Not everybody will be able to avail themselves of mass transit. Sometimes just the distances alone. If you are a student and you want to go to Chaffey College, it's about a 2.5 hour bus ride on Omnitrans. Think of that if it's somebody who has to work here at minimum wage and then take the bus to be able to commute back home. Having said that, I think we're making progress on housing. I think long-term, we are going to have to consider a time when things may not be as good as they are right now. I think, Mr. Mayor, you and I, most of the council have lived through at least one budget cycle that was difficult, but you and I have lived through several of them, and you know how painful it is when we have to do things. I would also encourage anybody, whether it's one of the members of our staff or the city council, to look at ways that we can cut expenses in a reasonable way. Look to the future. There are many things that may go down at some point that can facilitate us maybe saving a little bit of money. I know in private sector, what they will do quite often is offer some kind of a bonus or incentive or some type of an award if somebody can come up with a way to save some money and still keep the productivity of the organization. So we need to consider looking at all of those directions. Other than that, I think it's a good budget. I think it positions us well for the future. We can't always look at necessarily what a neighboring entity might be doing or paying because they have a different set of parameters than we do. But I think we're doing well. We pay a fair wage to our employees. I think we offer good benefits to our employees as well. As far as the community itself, I think the community appreciates what we're doing. I think everybody I hear says to me, this is a nice community. I enjoy living here, and we'll continue to do everything we can to continue to make this a good city to live in. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm a firm believer of quality of life, and that's what residents want in their community, and that's why Measure L was adopted, because the residents felt that was important. They have a good quality of life in their community here. And I just want to remind my council members, we're a city of 40,000, and if you look at a number of California cities that are close to us in population, you're going to find two things. One is they provide less services, and they have a smaller budget compared to what we do. And Measure L is definitely giving us the flexibility to ensure that we can enhance our services and enhancing our staffing levels. A couple of things that are out there, I think, are threats, and one was talked about the inflation right now, and of course, I think we're going to have a recession come up, and the budget has a lot of flexibility for us to deal with recession if there's a surprise. And one thing that I would like to remind my colleagues is, yeah, we have $7 million on designated reserves, but we have $17 million in designated reserves, which is 72% of the general fund. In past years, we probably had more like 50% reserves. So we actually have increased the amount of money sitting in our reserves, starting with the last budget. And finally, I think the other challenge we have, and started last year for sure, it's called the Great Resignation. And it's getting more and more difficult to hire employees. Maybe with a recession, if a recession happens, maybe it'll be a little easier to hire employees, qualified employees, not just bodies, but qualified employees. I know the chief back there is probably nodding his head and smiling a little bit. But that is a big challenge that not just Montclair, but everybody else is. So we have funded positions, but we've got to have qualified employees at the same time to fill those positions. So I would ask for a motion that we move this to the city council meeting on special city council.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a
Tuesday.
motion that we move it to the council meeting scheduled for June 27th, 2022.
Okay.
Second.
Got a second by Councilmember Johnson. We'll do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Martinez. Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue.
Aye.
Mayor Dutre.
Aye. In regards to the Housing Corporation, I think we're going to skip the presentation, and I do believe the last motion included also to move this to the next to the meeting on Tuesday. So with that, we're adjourned.